How's it going, guys? Everybody kind of stoked. I'm glad everybody came. I appreciate you guys coming out. It's a really good audience tonight, and kind of excited to hear what Abraham has to say. His company's Blue Centurion Homes. If you run by their website, you kind of see they put together a really good product, and we're trying to make it a point to bring out people with really good systems who produce a good product instead of kind of putting garbage out into the world. There are a lot of companies now that are, they're making a profit, but they're making a profit off a pretty poor product. And I think Abraham's kind of his company's got an exemplary product for the flip market. They represent us well. So, Abraham, I want to kind of start with going into, kind of give the audience an idea of what you do now, kind of what your day-to-day is like, and how your business runs.
All right. Great. Good evening, everyone. And thank you, Stephen, for inviting me here. My company is Blue Centurion Homes. I'm based in San Diego, California. I've been in real estate for about 7 years. I've been flipping most of the time, and right now I have an operation basically purchasing residential properties in Southern California, from San Diego County, Orange County, and LA County. So
perfect. Kind of want to. So a lot of people here will be, I guess, from every level of investment, and most people, especially new people, are really curious about how to get started. Kind of give us an idea of how you ended up beginning to flip property, and like how that itch sort of happened, and what made you take action.
Well, when I started, I have a business which is a textile business. So I had some savings, and back in about 2008, 2009, I wanted to diversify. So I started buying condos in San Diego County, basically for buy and hold. And I started buying one, and then another one, and then another one. This is basically all with the family money. And then I started reading a little bit about flipping. So I ended up purchasing my first home. I flipped it. I did really well on that one. That was back in, I think, 2009. And what was interesting is that the money that I made on flipping was much better than the one from the condos that I was expecting to make. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I said, okay, maybe I shouldn't buy any more condos and start going into houses.
Sure.
And flipping. So that's really how I started. My background is computers. I'm a computer engineer. And I do a lot of analysis. I think this business requires a lot of analysis based on, purchase prices and all the data that you have to really know in order to get into this business. And that really helped me because of the background on analyzing data.
Okay, so was there a moment where, I know I sort of prepared and I read books and I kind of got the idea, I wanted to go into real estate, but I had no idea where to go. Was there any moment where like, oh, this real estate market's interesting, I'd like to get into it? How did that thought process go? Do you remember?
Well, I remember, as I was telling you, I bought my first book, which was called Flip. Actually, you can buy it on Amazon, Flip. I think it's a good recommendation. And basically, I started on my own. I really didn't have anyone that trained me or anything like that. And basically, it was just out of curiosity and, spending my time in building relationships. I think that's very important. You need a lot of relationships in this business, from people that can help you with realtors, of course, that can provide you with data. You need, contractors that you can rely on, that are honest. Yeah. I've been through a lot of different projects where you get very surprised of what happens now with contractors.
You mean they
so,
disappear?
but anyways, I started basically on my own, and I started to grow.
So, when you transitioned from buy and hold to flipping, you had to sort of cultivate those realtor relationships. We talked briefly before the interview about buying at trustee sale. How did you did you just start picking up the phone? I mean, how did you cultivate the relationships with the people that you would purchase from when you first started transitioning from buy and hold to flip?
Okay, well, actually my accountant, I started asking him about the auction process because I thought that back in 2008, 2009, the auctions and the trustee sales, I think was an opportunity. So I read a lot about, title and the auction process. So my accountant referred to me to a realtor that had some experience about the auction process. So that's how I actually ended up going to the auctions. I actually came here to Riverside a couple of times because Riverside was a very important area, kind of like the epicenter of the foreclosures at the time. And just started to learn a little bit more about title, the importance of about the deed of trusts and the positions that they're on, and all those things. Of course, realtors start to help you. They train you a little bit about all these things, and because of my background, I actually developed my own system on analyzing properties. So this is when you guys have probably heard about a website called Foreclosure Radar. So I started analyzing data from Foreclosure Radar before I even started purchasing.
Okay, it's almost like a Mad Money sort of fake stock purchase in a way where you kind of pretend purchase.
Right. Yeah, and that's how I started. Then a friend of mine invited me to an investment fund. He said, Abraham, instead of investing money on your condos, why don't you invest with us? And, we're actually flipping. So I said, okay, sure, I'm also flipping. Let me see how you guys are doing your investment fund. So they had investors at the time, and they invited me to just as a regular investor. When I actually went to this meeting, this is a friend of mine, and I went to this meeting, I showed him a little bit about my process, and he ended up offering me to work for him in basically consulting and organizing the investment fund. So I worked with him for a few months, probably I think it was like 10 months. We did about 70 properties at the auction in San Diego, and I also did in Contra Costa County, which is up north near San Francisco.
Okay, so you sort of went into an existing system and you were able to kind of perfect and refine somebody else's existing system based on your research.
Yeah.
And so you had the refined system, and then somebody else had the background. You were able to combine them to start buying massively.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, that sounds like a kind of a perfect marriage in that case.
Yes.
So I guess it's really a matter of, in that case, networking, where you knew enough people to get you into the business.
Yes.
So we push that a lot. I mean, as much as I talk to people, I push networking and how important it is to meet new people all the time, and that's a big part of our business. If you were to start today, how would you go about building those relationships today? I know it's kind of a tough question.
Well, I think this type of conferences really work. This is the first time that I actually share my experience with anybody. So
I'm super glad you came out.
So thank you. I mean, I drove from San Diego. I've never done this in the past, and but I think it's about meeting. First of all, you have to feel comfortable with whoever you're working with. Number one, it has to be a realtor that you trust. I think starting with a realtor, that's very important.
Okay.
Once you do that, developing a relationship with contractors, at least one, again, that you can trust, because it can. The rehab is one of the most important things that you have to consider when you're flipping.
Sure, absolutely.
So those two things I think are very important, and I think you also have to do a little bit of analysis on your own. Ask questions on the realtors. How they are coming about the values that they are providing, because any regular individual doesn't have access to the MLS information, so you need someone to actually take you and and share with you the information that the MLS provides. I mean, nowadays you have Zillow, you have Trulia, you have all these other websites, which kind of give you an idea, but you cannot really base your company or your efforts with Zillow.
No, it's a great tool to look at, but it's not, the resource that the MLS offers is incomparable.
Right.
No, I completely agree with that. So, given that you'd start basically building a realtor relationship, building a contractor relationship. You obviously have to put your finances in place, and we talked about building the team. How important it is to get title, escrow, everybody else that can answer your questions for you. You're buying. I mean, you're still buying now, and you'll hear I'll run around and talk to people in this room or any other room, and every once in a while I hear somebody say there's no deals out there. Just for the sake of kind of disproving that, how many deals are you doing how many deals did you do in 2014?
Well, I purchased in 2014 74 different properties in Southern California.
And what portion of those were at the auction, you think?
Actually, in 2014, very few. I don't remember exactly, but probably out of those, maybe 10 or 15. So not that many, because the market changed from 2013 to 2014.
Absolutely.
So I stopped actually buying at the auction.
So when you stopped buying at the auction, and I mean you phased it out, and your teams kind of slow down, and you started going towards MLS and other sources, these are processes that have a much lengthier due diligence phase. They allow you to ask questions of other people, to kind of dig into the project, get an actual contractor bid of the interior. It's a much safer process.
Right.
How dramatically did that affect your business structure and sort of help your profitability?
Well, again, I think one thing that's very important is to understand what the market is doing. 2013 was a reality back then. 2014, I actually adapted my strategy into what the business was doing 3 different times throughout the year.
Wow.
So in the beginning of the year, I was buying at the auction. And I said, okay, well, I saw the auction actually phasing out, and I started going into the traditional market, like the MLS. But also the MLS was changing. Why was it changing? Because there were very few short sales, very few REOs. It was more, people that were buying, that were selling traditional sales, and you end up with product that is that needs a lot more work.
Sure.
See, many years ago, you could buy a property built in 2005, 2006 at the auction, and you really didn't have to spend too much money rehabbing that property.
Yeah.
Nowadays, in reality, in 2015, it's a completely different market. So most of the properties that I end up purchasing are rehabs that are much more expensive, $80,000, $100,000. You have to do additions, pull out permits with the cities. It's a much longer process. So even our cycle, it used to be 4 months. When I started about 4 months, you can basically buy a house and sell it within 120 days. Now my model right now, I run at 180 days.
Okay.
Which is 6 months.
Okay.
So I'm only turning a couple times a year my money.
Yeah, your same dollar's going twice, essentially.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, that dramatically affects your return, so you hope to get a larger margin.
Cash flow also, remember, because it's not the same rehabbing a property in 4 weeks or 6 weeks than rehabbing a property in 16 weeks.
Sure. Yeah, you have to sort of set aside that cash to sit and wait for the project to get to a point where you can spend it, and then money's locked up for that period of time.
Right.
So it completely changes the structure.
Yeah.
Interesting. Is there, if you were to look for, I don't want to dig too deep into how you procure deals outside the MLS. I mean, all of us have our own little networking niches. But if you were to brand new and you had a team in place, what's the I'm gonna say system, or what resource would you do to look for a deal? What resource would you use to find a deal?
Well, again, I think nowadays in 2015, it's through the MLS.
Is it?
I'm mostly looking at properties out of the MLS. I work with several realtors. As you're saying, you have your network. But I think you have to start slowly with one realtor. One important aspect is knowing your community, knowing the area where you want to invest, because the better you know that area, if I were to invest in Riverside County, I don't know this county, I have to be honest. So for me, it would be very difficult. Even though I can run comparables out of my computer in San Diego, it's not the same thing, because there could be some, items that I don't know about those areas. I don't know the history. So in order to really start, I think what's very important is to know that you're focused on a specific area, something that you can afford. And then based on that, get a realtor, maybe a couple of realtors, have them show you properties, and slowly. That's how I started.
I think it's awesome. It's such a simple process that people kind of overcomplicate, and I think it's great that you went from just I want to buy a house and I bought one. You did the analysis because you had the time, but there was no. You didn't need the giant pile of training in between. You just did it.
Yeah, I have to. This is not rocket science. I have to admit, this is not rocket science. This is, you do need a lot of due diligence, but as long as you know what you're doing, I think there's room for everyone to actually, be in the market.
I completely agree. So I want to go to questions from the audience. I kind of built in the questions I got from everybody in the audience into the interview questions. Is there anything that I didn't bring up that you kind of want to add before we go to questions?
No, I think it's better to have them ask whatever they want, and I'll try to answer as to the best of my abilities.
Perfect. So questions? Anyone? Jim, and then behind Jim. And Abraham, let me repeat the question real quick because we're recording. So the question was, when you approach a realtor, what kind of instructions are you giving them? 70%, of value minus repairs, or some formula in order to give them direction?
Well, nowadays, I have a system in place. So even before I talk to the realtor, nowadays I run my own analysis because I do have access to the MLS. I have realtors in my office. So it's easier for me to approach the listing agent, the agent that is representing the seller, and I already have kind of like a formula in mind, okay? So based out on pictures, I have a team, of course, of people that can drive properties and give me estimates kind of like on the fly. But for someone that is basically just starting, I think it's very important to talk to the realtor and run your numbers. Basically, you have your purchase price. You have to calculate what the ARV is, basically this resale price. And based on that, deduct your all of the different costs that are involved, from holding costs, escrows, things like that. So I think online you should be able to really download a basic formula. It's not that complicated. And based on that, run your numbers first. All I'm doing with the agents that I'm contacting is verifying that my numbers are accurate. And of course, you incorporate the profit that you hope to make. And I would highly encourage to have some sort of a cushion on your numbers, all the time. Because there's always
something every time.
Something's going to happen. If a deal is too tight, it's better to, skip it. Move on to the next one, if possible.
And what's that phrase, a deal of a decade comes along once a week? And they really do. Just there's one. I have a system in the MLS that automatically pops up criteria, and it's based on keywords and outline criteria. And every morning I open my computer and there's 30 new deals. So it sort of reinforces that idea that, yeah, there's 30 new deals tomorrow and 30 new deals tomorrow and you just start bypassing all the crap because it's not worth buying anymore. Yeah. And it's funny you mention that because it's so important to build that mentality that I don't have to hold on to this one deal. There's going to be another one tomorrow. Right. Just got to look for it.
Yeah. So anyways, Jim, I hope I answered.
Next question? So the question was, what are the margins in the deals now? What kind of margins is Blue Centurion looking for?
If I were to, I'm going to answer the question, but you'll think I'm actually crazy. Okay, in order to do all these deals that I do, I run with very, very tight margins. So nowadays in 2015, my margin is 5%. 5% on a deal. So just to give you an idea, if I buy a property for $500,000 and I'm gonna spend $70,000 into it, I'm already into $570,000. I may actually have to resell for, let's say, my 5. If the ARV, the resale price of the property is $650,000, I'm looking to make about $30,000 to $35,000 on that deal, which is like ridiculous.
That's a
5%, and well, because I'm a volume-oriented individual. Most investors nowadays, I think there's one important issue that you have to remember. I don't have any hard money loans. This is my own money. I don't pay any points, none of that. So that's very important. That's why I can do 5%. Most investors, even with cash, I think they're running probably between maybe 9, 10, 11, 12%. That's kind of like what they're looking for. I run with 5%. I used to buy properties at the auction that were $500,000, $600,000, even $1 million homes at $10,000. I wanted to make $10,000 on a deal of $1 million. You would think I would be crazy, but I actually ended up doing it. I did a lot of deals, hoping to make 10,000. So I went very aggressive in my purchase, and I ended up probably making 30,000. But my formula at the time was just for 10,000. And I did dozens of deals.
That's we didn't talk about that before. I had no idea how tight your margins were. The highest I really see now is about 12%. I rarely see. We get deals every once in a while on our desk, but rarely over 12. And that's borrowing hard money. So, really, their margin is 6% is what they're actually making at the end of the day because they're making a third to half of the profit by the time they're done. So you were down to a 1% margin with a padded, sort of a padded rehab and padded deal. But, you still, it's 3% on $1 million. It's because it's your own money. You want to keep it turning. But you also had a short return time, right?
Well, that was before. Nowadays, if I put down $1 million into a property, I need to make at least 5%, which is 50,000.
Yeah, it was much
on $1 million deal.
It was much higher volume and much more competitive then.
But still, if my rehab cost just moves a little bit from 100,000 into 130,000, forget it.
Yeah, you lost majority.
Then
of the profit.
You have to try to sell the property and compensate on the sale.
Yeah,
which is very hard nowadays because prices are basically flat. I don't think prices are going up or down. They may be coming up on the lower end, maybe $300,000, $400,000 properties, but most of the markets that I'm into, LA, Orange County, and San Diego, the market is flat. I don't think prices are going anywhere.
It's the same here. We're kind of seeing the same thing. When somebody calls me on a comp, I pull values all the way back to the beginning of 2014. I check the value all the way across the board, and I rarely take like the December comp over the January. They all look the same. It's as flat as it could be for the last year.
And actually, you'll be surprised. Just to finish up the question, you'll be surprised on even with 5% margins, I lose most of my deals. Meaning I don't purchase. Yeah, I can't purchase because there's somebody else that's offering more money than I am. Meaning there must be something else, right? There's only two other factors. one, either they value the property higher than I did, or they're putting less money into it.
You're, you know, when I invited you here, it was because you were in the, I think, top 5 of the buyers in Southern California right now for volume. And the difference between the top 10 buyers and everybody else is huge on volume-wise. I mean, there's a whole series of organizations that are all attached, but their entities show up different. And I would say if I combine them all, you know, like Aslan being at number 1 probably does 400 to 500 units, and they're like number 1, and their margins are so unbelievably tight. I can't even, I wouldn't want to touch that project. It's fun money. So the difference, you know, everybody else is incrementally tight on their margins, and then once you get down past the top 10, the rest of the buyers are sub 10 units a year. I mean, they were 10 units or less a year. And so, I mean, you're truly a volume-based business.
Yeah.
Now, our kind of move on. Next one. Anyone?
Well, first of all, I think you have to put things into perspective. You know, everyone has a limited amount of funds. I have a limited amount of funds. Just like you do, I have a limited amount of funds. Just to give you an example, I don't know the numbers on Riverside County, okay? But these are things that I look on a monthly basis. I look at the statistics of what's happening in the market in San Diego, okay? San Diego has, just to give you an idea, San Diego sells about, I would say about 1,500 homes, detached homes, every month. 1,500, okay? Plus about 800 condos. That's totaling about 2,300 units every month in San Diego. It's a $1.8 billion business, just San Diego alone. I'm only looking to buy 5 of them. 6 of them out of 2,300. I understand. There's a, I don't know exactly how many are distressed or not, but I'm just giving you an idea of the amount of volume that is out there, you know? So, you know, for instance, when I compete with people that are looking into $200,000 properties, I can't compete with them because there's so many investors out there that are looking to purchase things, let's say, I would say under 400,000, under 350,000, that I ended up concentrating my efforts into properties that are 600,000 and up. That's how I develop my, you know, my strategy. So you have to think about where you wanna fit. But I honestly think that there's always room for everyone. There's so many properties. This is just San Diego alone. LA County and Orange County, I'm not sure about the statistics, but probably there like 6,000 properties a month are sold in those counties alone. If you incorporate San Diego, just imagine 10,000, you know, about 8,000 properties every month. So, you know, how many properties do we need people in this group to buy, you know, next month? 100? There's plenty.
I want to, and I do, Abraham, it's funny because we talked about this before, is sort of volume and everybody's, you know, the little guy can't find a deal. I did a presentation at Pasadena Phoebe last month on 30 ways to find a deal, and they're all outside the MLS. And I'll give you an idea of a niche market that no one uses. So Serrano Homes, and there's I think 2 other builders at the time, they built one specific model home, and that home was 1,500 square feet, but it has a garage attached to it, and the garage is a 3-car garage, except one unit is at the elevation of the house, and the rest of the garage is below. So technically, there's a 15 by 11 room that's attached to the property. Now, to get the permit, it's like $500, and you automatically get, you know, 150, 170 square feet added to your property that when Abraham's bidding, he can't see that because he doesn't know the neighborhood. So it's really about knowing your market, getting really refined, because real estate was macro and now it's micro. And if you can find your little spot, some niche, maybe it's doing a one-bedroom addition, maybe it's doing a garage conversion, maybe it's buying homes before 1950 because the funds won't touch them, maybe it's buying 2 bedrooms, maybe it's buying 1 bedroom and turning them into Section 8 for seniors. There are so many ways to buy property. I personally can't buy an excuse that you can't find a deal because it's for lack of creativity, not for lack of volume out there. Question? So the question was, does he target short sales at all?
Oh yeah, I target anything that comes through my desk and my team. You know, short sales nowadays are very few. You know, it's not like it used to be a couple of years ago. Same thing as REOs, you know. They're winding down. So nowadays, you know, I think the market is changing. So that's why you have to get a feel. And I think a professional realtor is the one that's going to be able to really give you, if they're honest, they're going to be able to give you a good indication. But short sales nowadays, I do see a lot of probate sales nowadays. I do see more trust sales, you know, traditional sales, rather than REOs and short sales.
Would you say that in your experience with short sales, that those were much more of a relationship business than a bottom line business? Where the realtor sort of knew you, and it wasn't about getting the best offer, it was about the offer they knew would close.
Yeah, I mean, I think nowadays we as investors try to work with the realtors, and you know, like anything, they are the ones that are holding the property. They are the ones that own the listing in a way. So many times you want them to, if they see the incentive to make money, meaning representing you on the purchase, even though I have in my office a few realtors in my office where I can represent myself directly, I always try to have the agent represent me on the purchase. And sometimes I need to give them actually, you know, have them resell the property for me, you know, on the back end. So those are things that are very common with investors nowadays.
That was when I was doing acquisition for investors. That was my number one strategy, was you always had to resell through me to get the deal. And so I would pick the investors that I would get the resell through. So you end up making 5% in every transaction. So you made 5% and I made 5%, but I didn't put money up.
Oh no, believe me, a lot of times realtors make more money than I do. But that's the way the business is run nowadays. So
yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I'm just trying to be very upfront and not, you know.
No, that's what we want. That's why. No, the reason I brought you out and would bring anybody out that's actually doing the business is, instead of being a speaker, you're doing the business, and everybody wants the honest answers of what's going on instead of wondering. And I greatly appreciate it. I think everybody does. Questions? Anyone? So the question was, does he have a mailing system set up to get inventory?
No, I haven't tried that. I used to. I tried at some point in time in analyzing that, but you know, I got caught up with other things. Honestly, I haven't tried that.
Any more? Okay, one. So has he ever considered multifamily? Commercial too? And commercial?
Oh yeah, sure. I think, again, that's part of what the market is doing. I think you have to understand what's happening. And nowadays, because of affordability, a lot of people are going more into, you know, rentals. So, you know, my model is not for rentals. I don't buy and hold. So nowadays, I do go into multifamilies. Actually, last week I was in escrow on a triplex in San Diego. But I decided not to move on it, and yeah, also try to commercial. Now, also I think it's important, going back into my projects that I currently have, most of them, or in, you know, I have several of them, I would say, you have to do additions to bring more value into the property. So you have to have a little bit of vision how you can actually capitalize on a good property. Maybe there's a view, maybe there's some other ideas that you can implement into the house.
The unique selling aspect of whatever it is.
Yeah, and also I think one thing that I would recommend everyone here is to understand what the end user is looking for. I think people get caught up with this idea that flipping is a quick way to make money. Many times, if you don't understand what the end user is looking for, it's a big mistake. And if I were to give you, in my opinion, what people are looking for nowadays, it's basically peace of mind.
Mm-hmm.
The end user is looking for peace of mind. They just want a good product, good quality. They don't want to go into, if somebody is looking for a house for $450,000 and they see another house at $400,000 that still needs a little bit of work, and your house is worth $50,000 more, and it's completely turnkey, it's move-in ready, it has all the appliances, all the bells and whistles that you're offering, that's really what people want. They don't want a deal. They don't want to save $50,000. They just want peace of mind. That's kind of like what I'm trying to tell you. You have to do the right product.
Who's making that decision for you? Like what that right product is? What kind of appliance you put? What kind of countertop? What kind of granite level you put?
Go ahead. I can hear it on the mic.
Okay. Well, Jim, I have a team, and I'm very involved with that. So we have a professional interior designer as part of my company, and I'm very involved in the operations. So every single property that I buy, I walk that property, every single one. I've never actually bought a property that I haven't actually been into. So for me, it's very important to figure out what the house is going to look like at the end of the day. Most of the time, and houses nowadays have layout flaws. They don't flow properly. So when an end user goes into the house, they immediately sense it. You don't even have to tell them. People realize very naturally when they go into a house that, this doesn't flow. So that's when you have to have your contractor come up and, help you with whether you can, change the layouts and walls and structural issues and things like that. So
a lot of that, so you're going out to the site with your contractor and with the designer, or you with the contractor and direct the designer as to what you want to do?
actually, we're 3 people. Most of the time, it's 3 people we are involved. It's myself, we have the interior designer, and my project manager. The contractor is not even there. I have a project manager. So the project manager, the 3 of us walk the property, we visualize what we want to do, and then we build a scope of work. Once we build a scope of work, that is the process. So we are very detailed on what we want to do on the property. So everything is spelled out on the scope of work. Then we meet with the contractor and say, okay, this is what we want to do. How much is it going to cost? But yeah, it's basically a team effort. I'm not the only one, working at Blue Centurion. I have to recognize the work of a lot of people that are behind me, not just in my office, even though we have a small operation in my office. We're about 10 people, but it's really the contractors that make reality. It's the painters and the plumbers and all these people that I have to appreciate all the work that they do.
Absolutely. Anybody else? All right, I'm going to wrap it up. I'm going to have Todd come up and kind of explain why you have networking stickers on. And with that, I want to thank Abraham. Can we give him a big round of applause for coming out?
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much.